Hello and welcome to our session related to Experiential Learning Week 2021. I'm Amy Halbrook. I'm the Associate Dean for Experiential Learning at Chase College of Law, NKU. And I am here with my colleagues to talk about some of the clinics that we run out of Chase College of Law. So I will let my colleagues introduce themselves, and I will introduce myself more formally when we get to my section. Thanks. You want to start, Jennifer?
Sure. Good morning, folks. My name is Jennifer Kinsley. I'm a professor of law at Chase College of Law, and I'm also the Associate Dean for Professional Development, and I'm looking forward to sharing with you a little bit about the Chase Externship Program today. And David, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, I am David Singleton. I'm a professor of law at Chase as well, and I am the director of the Constitutional Litigation Clinic, which I'll describe in a bit more momentarily. And I'm also the executive director of the Ohio Justice and Policy Center, and I'll explain how that interfaces with NKU and the clinic that I teach.
So Jennifer is going to give us a little background on, experiential learning and our goals within the legal context in the law school for teaching students, and then we'll go on and talk about some of our specific programs.
So just to give folks a little bit of background on experiential learning specific to law schools, this is both an old and a new phenomenon. So it's old in the sense that hundreds of years ago, people used to become attorneys by apprenticing with other people who knew the trade. Everybody's probably familiar with the story we learned in 4th grade about Abraham Lincoln and how he became a lawyer this way by working with someone else who was already a practicing attorney. And so the tradition of legal education is rooted in that kind of experiential learning where you learn by doing, where the learning process is very hands-on. But legal education got away from that in more recent times. And when I went to law school more years ago than I want to tell you, my legal education was focused much more specifically on classroom learning, on book knowledge, on the kinds of sort of deep understanding of legal principles that you need to navigate the legal profession. And while I was fortunate enough to be on the early cusp of the renewal of experiential learning, and I did have some hands-on experience in law school, a lot of my classmates didn't. And a lot of people who graduated law school at the time that I did not have any opportunity in school to really learn what lawyers do day to day. So during that kind of middle time when experiential learning wasn't a big deal in law schools, people would graduate from law school and they would really have no idea how to do the daily work of lawyers. And so the first year or two of legal practice was spent doing these kinds of hands-on sort of training techniques, training activities. And there was a real gap in those early years for legal practitioners in terms of what they could do, because they hadn't learned in law school the basic skills that they needed. They learned a lot of book knowledge, but not a lot of skill development. And so about a decade or so ago, legal education really experienced a renaissance in terms of experiential learning. Law schools started to create clinics, which as David and Amy will explain in a minute, are where a full-time law professor works hand in hand with students on actual legal cases. And then law schools also started to explore what we call externships or field placements. And this is what I'm going to talk about today, and this is one of the roles that I play at Chase. Externships are where it's kind of a three-way relationship. So I'm not, as the faculty member, directly supervising student legal work, but instead I work hand in hand with real legal practitioners, judges, and other people out in the field who are providing students an opportunity to work in real legal settings, handling real legal matters while they're still in school. So with that background, let me just share my screen and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about externships generally. Let me get this slideshow set up. So we're going to talk about, for a few minutes, about legal externships and field placements and what these are. So a common question I get on this topic is, what on earth is an externship? A lot of people have heard of the term internship, but they don't necessarily know what an externship is. But here's kind of the difference. An internship is a two-way relationship between a student and an employer. Internships exist primarily for the employer's benefit. So the employer is hoping to get some work of some kind out of the student. Internships do enable students to gain experience in a particular industry or practice. Internships may be compensated or uncompensated. Internship job duties are unregulated, meaning other than the employer's discretion, there's no outside body or group that speaks to what the student will be doing in an internship. And internships are not for academic credit. In contrast, externships are a three-way relationship between the student, the employer, and the university. Externships exist primarily for the student's educational benefit and not for the employer's benefit. However, like internships, externships enable students to gain experience within a particular industry or practice, and externships also have the additional benefit in legal settings of enabling students to obtain limited student practice licenses, which means that students have a temporary sort of pass from the state bar or state Supreme Court to be able to actually handle real cases on their own in court. Externships, like internships, may be compensated or uncompensated. The job duties are shaped by the student and the university, not by the employer, and externships earn academic credits. Who is eligible for externships? So the answer to this question is specific to Chase. Each law school kind of sets the policies around the scope of their externship program, but here's what we do at Chase. So in order to participate in an externship, students must have completed 28 credits in law school. That's the equivalent of the first year of a 3-year law school curriculum. So after the first year, going into that first year summer, students are eligible for these kinds of experiences. Students must be in good academic standing. They must pass their legal research and writing courses, which happen in that first year. And students who have reached the 60 credit mark, typically after their second year of law school, they're eligible for those limited student practice licenses that I mentioned. We also have some screening criteria for the places where students can work in an externship setting. They must be working with a licensed attorney who has at least 3 years of experience, although their day-to-day supervision may be happening with someone else. For example, in small law firms, students may work hand in hand with tasks, but both of those individuals are being supervised by licensed attorneys. The placement must be approved by the externship director, that's me. So I take an active role in screening all placements to make sure that they are going to offer a good educational experience for the student, because remember, the focus in externships is on the student learning. The placements must agree to specific terms and conditions. We require them to be trained. There are check-ins. They must give feedback. They must document the student's experience, et cetera. So we really work closely with the externship supervisors to ensure that the students are having a good learning experience. Externship places may be remote. So students may be working remotely, and this was true even before the pandemic. So lawyers sometimes work from home. And that was true before COVID. And so students are allowed to work in this remote way where the student is in one place and the supervisor is in another place, so long as the students are having some form of face-to-face contact at least weekly. And face-to-face can be by Zoom, as we all know. Placements also cannot be with an immediate relative. We do tend to have a number of students at Chase whose parents are lawyers or whose spouses are lawyers or whose siblings are lawyers. And we don't allow those students to take on an externship placement with their immediate family members for reasons that are probably pretty obvious. That tends to create sometimes some conflict within families, and we don't want to do that. All right, how do externs earn credit? So this is the basic structure of our program. For every 50 hours that students work in the field, they get 1 credit. And they can earn between 1 and 12 credits in any given semester. So they can work between 50 and 600 hours in any given semester. When students are working on the higher end of that hours range, we call that semester in practice, meaning the student is spending most of their semester out in the field, out in legal practice, and not in the classroom. And then accompanying all externships is a mandatory online professionalism seminar where students learn things like how to develop an effective professional social media presence, how to network with other lawyers, how to engage in active listening. We talk about career planning and cultural competence and legal ethics as well. So where do externs work? At Chase, we have a general externship program, meaning that students can work in virtually any kind of legal setting, running the gamut from private practice and law firms to government agencies to courts and other specialized organizations. We have students working with small, medium, and large law firms across the greater Cincinnati area. We have students working with prosecutors and public defender offices on both sides of the river. We have students working in federal, state, and local government departments, and sometimes that means that our students are going elsewhere to take on this work. We have students placed in DC, Atlanta, Chicago, really the sky's the limit there. We also have students placed with judges in courts at every level of the state and federal system. In the federal system, we've had students working at the Sixth Circuit, at US district courts on both sides of the river, and at the state court level, we've placed students with both the Kentucky and Ohio Supreme Courts, the appellate courts, and trial courts. We also have students placed in in-house corporate legal departments, including at General Electric and healthcare companies, again, across the greater Cincinnati area. Our students also work with nonprofits, including Legal Aid and 2 special organizations that you're going to hear about from Amy and David, the Children's Law Center and the Ohio Justice and Policy Center. Our students have also worked with Equality Ohio and victims advocacy organizations. And something that's really exciting is that our students in the past have also taken on externship placements abroad. We've had students working in the Netherlands and multiple students working in South Africa. We actually have a student headed to Africa in just a few weeks. We also allow students to work in specialized placements like the NKU and UC athletic departments and with sports agencies, and also in the NKU HR department. What do externships do, or what do externs do once they've found their externship and they're starting to work in the field? So here's a list of some activities that they take on. Students obviously observe a whole lot of legal proceedings. They sit in on meetings and court hearings, mediation sessions, business meetings. They have client interaction. They meet with clients. They call clients. They email clients. They interact with attorneys both within their placement and outside of their placement. They connect with opposing counsel. They network across the legal profession. They engage in document review. They look at depositions, medical records. They deal with expert documents, transcripts, and exhibits. They do a lot of legal research and writing. So they research cases and issues. They write briefs and memos. Students working with judges will often write opinions that wind up being issued by the court. Students in business settings work in all kinds of business documents, including estate planning documents, leases, contracts, and those kinds of things. Students learn to strategize about a particular case or legal matter. They're involved in fact investigation and conversation with attorneys about how to handle the case. Students with that limited license that I talked about after the second year of law school, they can stand up in court and represent a range of clients and a range of proceedings. They can actually try cases on their own, and our students have done that successfully. And then lastly, externship students participate in professional activities. They attend bar association meetings and training sessions, whatever their attorney mentor is doing, they tend to do too. So if the supervising attorney is attending a continuing education program, the student oftentimes will tag along and have that really full experience of what it is that lawyers do day to day. All right, I know we're going to leave a few minutes for questions. I'm going to turn it over to David now and let him describe his clinic for you at the Ohio Justice and Policy Center.
And I think that Amy wanted to get in for just a second before I speak. Amy, is that right still, or do you want me to go?
I wanted to talk about clinics in general a little bit before you speak. So the externship clinic or field placement clinic is one of the clinic models that we offer at Chase. But we also offer something a little different called a live client clinic, and the model is a little bit different. So I want to talk about that. Our live client clinics include the constitutional litigation clinic that David runs and he'll speak about. We have a small business and nonprofit clinic. We have the Children's Law Center clinic, which I'm going to talk about. We have a Sixth Circuit clinic, which is a partnership between Chase, a Cincinnati law firm, and UC Law School, and UC and Chase students both participate in that clinic. And then we have a partnership with the Department of Public Advocacy in Kentucky to run the Kentucky Innocence Project where Chase students work on innocence claims on behalf of people who are incarcerated in Kentucky. Live client clinics are considered kind of the gold standard in experiential learning within the law school environment. Often what happens with law students is when they work in law firms or when they do externships, not in our program, which is really a teaching program, but frequently what happens when law students are working in practice with attorneys, they serve as interns, or they're providing assistance to attorneys who are working on cases. And our clinics flip that model. And instead, it's either a partnership between the student and the supervising attorney, or it's actually a full flip where the student is the lead counsel on a case and the professor is providing support to the student. So it sort of depends on the student's skill level, the student's comfort, and the model that's been adopted by the professor. And like in our externship program, students who participate in clinics participate in a classroom component where there is substantive learning, and then there is also skill development. There's consistent reflection. There is always an ethics component because we have to be teaching our students how to comply with the rules of professional responsibility that govern lawyers, and because ethical issues come up all the time in legal cases. So we are reflecting with students on legal ethics, and then really also morality and justice in our interactions with real life clients and clinics. So our clinics are designed to be a learning opportunity, a great, amazing learning opportunity for our students. And then they're also designed to provide a service for clients who are frequently low income and would not have access otherwise to a highly skilled and competent attorney. So now I'm going to hand it over to David. Of course, probably many of you know David, and the students just love him, and he runs an amazing clinic. Thank you.
Way too kind of you, Amy. Let me describe the Constitutional Litigation Clinic. It is in partnership with the Ohio Justice and Policy Center, which is Jennifer told you, is also a place where Chase students can do externships. The Ohio Justice and Policy Center is a nonprofit public interest law firm that provides free legal representation to people who are incarcerated in prison. And most of those cases involve deprivation of the incarcerated person's civil rights. We also provide free legal representation to people who've come out of prison and face a whole range of issues that make it difficult for them to get on their feet and be productive. So the clinic, the Constitutional Litigation Clinic, started in 2006. And it started as a partnership between OJPC and Chase Law School. The name is a little misleading. And I've been thinking about changing the name, quite frankly, because we focus on a very narrow piece of the Constitution, which is the Eighth Amendment. The Eighth Amendment prohibits cruel and unusual punishment. And all of the clinic cases, with a few exceptions, involve people who are incarcerated in Ohio prisons and who face a range of deprivations of their civil and human rights. And what am I talking about? It could range from denial of health care that they need to save their lives. It could be a person who was sexually assaulted by a prison staff member, a correctional officer, or other staff member. Or that person may have been beaten up by another incarcerated person as prison officials just turned a blind eye to it. Or it could be denial of the ability of the incarcerated person to practice their faith. So those are the range of cases that involve incarcerated people. And occasionally the clinic will represent folks who have come out of prison and face civil rights issues as well because they are incarcerated. And one example of that kind of case is a man who was rendered homeless because prison officials would not, the parole officials would not let him live at home. This was a man who had committed a sexual offense not involving a child. And basically because he had children at home, even though his offense didn't involve a child, he was told you can't live at home. So that case is still actually in federal court, and we've been litigating that now for over 3 years. So what do the students get to do in the clinic? Well, everything. And everything from the initial meeting of the client, conducting the interview, finding out what the problem is from the client's standpoint, and brainstorming what we can do to address the problem using the law. The students are drafting the initial documents that start a case. You start a case by filing a complaint. And most of our cases, by the way, are brought in federal court. Occasionally we will have a state court claim or a state court case, but the students are involved in drafting the initial documents that get the case going. Obviously, they're involved in doing legal research to flesh out the law surrounding the claims that we're going to be bringing. The students do all of what's called discovery. That's the process by which, after the case is filed, we get to learn about the other side's case. They get to learn about ours as well. But that's a process that allows students, for instance, to take depositions where we have the other side's witnesses under oath, and we question them. And I say we, it isn't David Singleton, the professor, doing any of the questioning. It is the student who's on the case, or students who are on the case, who are going to do the depositions. Occasionally, we have trials, and often those trials are in cases where we are trying to get immediate relief for someone. So there's a way that we can ask a court to order the government to, for instance, provide medical care that our client needs. Or in the case that I described a minute ago, where our client was made homeless, we had an emergency hearing where there was evidence taken, and the students in federal court did that hearing. Still frustrated that it's still pending all these years later, but sometimes justice doesn't move as quickly as we want it to move. But those hearings often are hearings where we're trying to get the court to order something to be done by the prison or correctional system. And occasionally we will have a trial where we have a client who has been injured monetarily. One case comes to mind where we had a woman that we represented who had a very serious medical issue. The prison officials let other incarcerated people see her medical file. And as a result of that, there were all these rumors and being spread about her and her condition. We sued for money damages, claiming that the prison officials were negligent in allowing access to her file by other incarcerated people who did not have a right to see the information. So that case, the students tried and won some money damages to compensate her, won a monetary award to try and do something to make her whole. So the students do the trials, and again, it's not David Singleton standing up there questioning witnesses. My goal is to say one or two words only, and that is good morning to the judge. There might be some other small comment I make at some point, but the students are the ones who are trying the cases. And occasionally, when we lose cases, we go up to the Court of Appeals. In the federal system, for us, that would be the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals. That is a Court of Appeals that's one step below the United States Supreme Court. We've had, over the years, I believe it's 7 Sixth Circuit arguments that the students have gotten to do. And again, I'm not doing those arguments. The students are doing the argument. And we have won, I think, 4 out of those 7, if I'm not mistaken. 4 out of those 7 appeals we've won. And in a couple instances, winning those appeals then resulted in the person that we're representing winning their case, and in one case getting a significant financial settlement for having his head rammed into a wall and suffering permanent injury as a result, head rammed into the wall by a correctional officer. So to some students, this seems like it's really, really intimidating. Students are going to be meeting with clients, drafting pleadings, taking depositions, trying cases, arguing in the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals. And that sounds like we're just throwing them into the water and saying sink or swim. That is absolutely not what we do. Absolutely not. There is so much preparation, so much work that goes into getting prepared to conduct a deposition, to do a hearing, to question witnesses at that hearing, to arguing a case in the Sixth Circuit. We prepare everything. We do what's called moots. We practice. I I will often play when we are preparing for deposition. I or another lawyer in the office will play the witness, and then sometimes another lawyer will play opposing counsel, because so often there will be objections during these hearings, and we make the student prepare by practicing until they feel confident enough to do it. And we always try and make those practice sessions harder than the real thing, so that when the student stands up in court, it comes off almost flawlessly. And the preparation for trials is even more intense and involves multiple sessions. We often will have those sessions in the in the courtroom at Chase Law School. And for Court of Appeals arguments, our rule of thumb is we do at least 3 moots, probably more will happen before the student will be ready to stand up and answer questions from a panel of 3 judges in the Court of Appeals. So preparation. The students, once they get through the year, and my clinic, by the way, I should say, is a year-long commitment. There are 8 students that are able to do it for the entire year. And when they are done, they can really say that they can hit the ground running in terms of practice. They have improved their writing, because nothing gets filed unless it goes through a lot of review and revision. So we work on their writing, that we work on their oral advocacy skills, their trial skills. They can really hit the ground running. And I'll just close by saying we had a really nice victory this year. We represented 3 incarcerated men who were being denied the ability to fully practice their faith. They practice a faith called Sacred Name Sabbatarianism. And without getting into the details of what that faith is, one of the requirements is that they be allowed to eat kosher meals. And the particular prison did not want to give them kosher meals. And we had to sue. We had to sue in federal court. And as a result of the hard work of the 3 students who handled that case, all 3 men got their meals. They're fully able to practice their faith. And they are, feeling like they had their voices heard, and now their spiritual needs are met. So I always encourage people to check out the Constitutional Litigation Clinic if you want to get a very hands-on experience representing live clients in federal court mostly. That's the clinic for you. Amy, I'm turning it back over to you.
Thank you, David. I realized that that we didn't say that the Q&A function is open, and if anyone has questions for Jennifer or David, you can of course type them into the Q&A program, and we can answer questions now or at the end of our presentation. So I am going to talk about the NKU Chase Children's Law Center Clinic, and I do have a PowerPoint for you, so I need just a second. So my PowerPoint won't have the same kind of information that Jennifer's contained. Mine is more photographs, so you can get a sense of what one of our clinics looks like and see students participating. Some of the photographs are posed, but a lot of them are actually photographs that we've taken in the courthouse or while students are out in the field. So the NKU Chase Children's Law Center Clinic is a collaboration between the Children's Law Center, which is a community-based legal services organization in Covington, Kentucky. and Chase College of Law. So Chase, the Children's Law Center was founded by Kim Brooks Tandy, who was a Chase grad. And she had a social services background, and she wanted to represent children kind of across all of the areas that kids might find themselves in court. And in particular, she wanted to do some juvenile delinquency work, some school work, and some child protection work. And it's very unusual for within the child law world for an attorney to want to take on all these different areas of law. Attorneys usually specialize in, delinquency and criminal law, or they do family law, or they do education. And so Kim wanted to develop an integrated program where she could follow clients from one court to another and solve problems holistically. And that's how the Children's Law Center was born. And there's always been a relationship between the Children's Law Center and Chase. But for the most part, Chase students had always been clerks and interns in the Children's Law Center. And Kim had a goal of having a live client clinic. And so she had a discussion with representatives of the law school over a period of many years, more than 10 years, about establishing a clinic. So in 2001, so this is the 10th year now of the clinic that we started. And I got to figure out how to go to the next page. So in 2010, there was a professor named Lowell Schechter who was retiring, and he had been the longtime family law professor at Chase, and he was also on the board of the Children's Law Center. And in honor of Lowell in his retirement, his family and friends started a fund to fundraise for a clinic. And the Children's Law Center offered up the 3rd floor of the building, which is an old church. And they had been occupying 2 floors of the clinic, as the 1st floor is legal offices where the CLC attorneys work. The 2nd floor was student space where student clerks worked. And they raised the money to build a clinic where we could have a model law office for Chase students. And so these are pictures of our clinic space. On the bottom left, you see our kind of casual classroom space. It's a multi-purpose space. When we have child clients and their families in the space, this is kind of our waiting room. We also do class sometimes in the space if we need to use technology. And then on the bottom right, you'll see our formal classroom. So when we do our clinic class, students are enrolled in the class for 3 or 4 credit hours. They have to participate in a classroom component where they're learning about child and family law, and they're learning how to do how to complete basic lawyering tasks. So we teach them how to do interviewing, how to do counseling, how to, client counseling, how to develop a theory of a case, how to write motions, how to do discovery, how to write witness exams, how to perform, how to argue a motion, and really, we do the same kind of preparation that David does in terms of, moots in anticipation of trial. So we're not doing, for the most part, appellate work. We are doing kind of day-to-day lawyering for young people on behalf of young people who are involved in high conflict custody matters or juvenile delinquency matters. And the students, for the most part, have the limited licenses. And so they are able to do everything that attorneys do, as long as they're supervised. So they step up in court, and they are it is a partnership model in that the student and the supervising attorney work together. And when I say the supervising attorney, I mean me. And I do have a woman named Susie Bookser who works with me, who is a Chase grad and a retired public defender who also supervises students in cases. But the students are counsel on the cases. They put their names on the pleadings. They appear in court. They have primary relationships with the client, and they do everything that lawyers do. So in the classroom component, in any case, we're teaching them the law, we're teaching them procedure, and we're teaching them what they need to know in order to try cases in a trial court. This is another picture of our classroom space. As you can see, there are offices along the side. Those are student offices, so that we have a file room, we have phones and computers. The students like to work collaboratively, so frequently they're working out in this open space, but they do have the possibility of working in their own offices when they need quiet time. If they are meeting with clients, we also have client meeting rooms that are private. And that's especially important in terms of attorney-client privilege and confidentiality. But also when you're working with child clients, there are special considerations about emotional safety and really making sure that the clients feel comfortable talking to us. So in terms of casework, these are all clinic students who have, who gave permission to us to be photographed. So the students, like I said, work primarily on delinquency and high conflict custody cases. And when they do casework, they learn how to put together a case file. There's both an electronic and a paper case file. They match each other. Because many people work in our case files. The students are working collaboratively with each other and with the professor. So, there are a minimum of 3 people working in a file at any time. So they have to learn how to manage a file so that someone else can pick up the file and go into court if they need to, or figure out what's going on in a case. And what that means is managing information that comes in from other sources, also keeping memos of every activity that we've taken and undertaking we've taken in the case. There's, like I said, there's a lot of collaboration. Of course, the students do the legal research and they do drafting and they get ready to go into court or mediation or into client meetings, but there are so many things they don't know yet because they just haven't had that experience. And, students are worried about going into court and having their knees knock. Or once I was in court with a student who started hyperventilating the first and weaving the first time that she stepped up in court. So what we try to do is anticipate all of the things that they're going to be worried about. Of course, we can't anticipate everything. But we do mocks, we talk them through what's likely to happen. We take them into the courthouse long before they're ever going to be appearing before a judge. And, we help them just get a foundation for understanding how court procedure works and what's likely to happen. This photograph in the middle is a photograph of 2 students who made arguments in a custody matter in the clinic a couple of years ago. And the male student on the right is now working for legal aid of the Bluegrass in Cincinnati, in Covington, actually working on family court cases. So many of the students who come through the clinic decide to go into family law or public defense. And so we see a lot of them in the local courthouses. It's really fun. And they are frequently the most knowledgeable and the best prepared attorneys in the courthouse. That's certainly true when they're students, because they have an unlimited amount of time to prepare for cases. But when they're new attorneys too, if they've come through the clinic, they can really hit the ground running because they have established a foundation for practice. In terms of supervision for the students, so this is something that that people don't always understand. And when we talk about flipping the model, here's what we do. When we get a new case, we give it to the students and we say, read the case. Start thinking about what your theory of the case might be, right? It's got to include, lawyers have to include, apply the law to the facts, and there has to be a little emotion involved as well. So the students have to familiarize themselves with what's in the file, and that might just be a single pleading or something that's come from even a police report, something that's come from the court. And then they will have to pull up the law, and they'll have to start thinking about what's going to be relevant and what kind of investigation they want to do, and how they want to proceed with developing their case, who they want to interview, where they want to go do observations, who they want to talk to. So we ask them to do that first and come up with a plan even before they meet with supervisors. And that's because we want the process to be student directed. And while Susie is the woman with the gray hair on the right, on the left side picture, while Susie and I, could easily make a plan for them, the idea is that we want them to start thinking about how they will develop their plan. So once they develop a plan, then they set a meeting with us to talk about how they want to proceed. And we add, whatever insight we have to help them get started. And then we have regular meetings with them on their cases for supervision, and we help them prepare as the case goes along. Usually over the course of a single semester, the students will be in court 3 or 4 times on a single case. And most students are assigned to 2, 3, 4 cases, depending on how active the cases are and how many credits the students are doing. In addition to our casework, students work on policy projects and community education projects. So on the left of your screen, you will see an amicus brief that the students worked on. It related to the death penalty in Kentucky. In 2005, there was a case that went to the United States Supreme Court related to juveniles and the death penalty. And that case was called Roper v. Simmons, and it declared the death penalty unconstitutional, cruel and unusual punishment as applied to juveniles, 17 and under. So this case, Breadhold, Commonwealth of Kentucky v. Breadhold, was about whether those protections for juveniles should be extended to young people up to the age of 20. So this is an important learning opportunity for the students, because of course they had to look at all of the juvenile case law and figure out how to extrapolate and make arguments related to a slightly older population. But besides the learning experience, they also got to participate in something really important, the public policy of this state. And they got to put their names on an amicus brief that was submitted to the United States Supreme Court. So we do that. We don't do it every year, but every year the students work on policy projects. So one year we did we had an immigration issue come up in one of our cases, and so the students wanted to do a legal handbook for immigrant parents. Usually our projects are student directed. We also we participate in conferences, we invite juvenile justice speakers to come to the law school. The students do pop-up clinics sometimes, so they'll go into the courthouse and help parents fill out, parents or grandparents fill out custody motions, or they can help with other kinds of paperwork in the family law context. And then we tend to, I think all of us tend to build really significant relationships with our clients. I'm sorry, with our students, right? And like I mentioned, we in the Children's Law Center Clinic, when we go into court, we run into our students all the time. And especially the ones who are practicing in family law or in juvenile court, you know, we tend to have relationships that last years, and you know, I'm sure many of them are going to last you know, over the course of a lifetime. We even have our first clinic baby. So graduation is important, and we help our students look for jobs. We you know, provide support to them in that area because we're connected with legal practitioners across the country. And we also provide sometimes support to them in their early practice. And then later on, even if they need support when they're preparing, you know, like David's students are arguing in the Sixth Circuit. Well, attorneys need to do moots, whether they're students or first-year practitioners or 20-year practitioners. And so sometimes we also continue to provide support for our clinic students as they are really getting into higher level practice, and they need feedback. So the relationships continue, and that's one of the great parts of running this clinic, is that we see our students practicing at the highest levels and having, you know, experience that many attorneys never have in the course of their whole careers. So I think you can probably tell I love the clinic. It was my dream to run this clinic, and it has really exceeded my wildest dreams. I'm going to stop our share. Do we have, this is probably a good time for to take questions if there are any. You could submit them in the Q&A, and David, Jennifer, or I would be happy to answer them. Otherwise, is there anything that we've forgotten, David and Jennifer? Anything you want to add?
Not that I can think of.
Well, I guess we're going to wind down. I would just suggest to you that if you ever need to refer clients, you can certainly be in contact with me. If it's not something that we do in the law school, you know, we do have a pro bono program, which some of you heard about on Tuesday. You know, there's so many resources in the law school. So these are only a handful of the experiential learning opportunities that we have for students. We have our students out in the field doing so much work, and also doing a lot of simulations and other kinds of experiential work within the law school. So if you have questions with us, let us know. And then if you want to refer a client, or if someone comes to you about with questions about our experiential learning program, just have them contact me. I'm Amy Halbrook, and I'm the Associate Dean for Experiential Learning. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We appreciate it, and we had a good time. Bye.
Thanks so much. Bye.